She had just beaten the world number 4, and 2 weeks earlier, that exact same opponent had beaten her 6-0, 6-2, and barely broken a sweat. Same 2 players, same surface, 19 days apart. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what changed in those 19 days, and why the rest of the tour still hasn't caught up to the answer. Stay with me, because this isn't really a story about one match, or even 2. It's a story about how fast a career can turn, how little the tour actually knows about a player it thought it had scouted, and what happens when 2 very different competitors keep getting thrown into the same draw. Let's start at the beginning, because the beginning explains almost everything about what happened later. Alexandra Eala was born on May 23, 2005, in Quezon City in the Philippines, a country with almost no infrastructure for producing a WTA-level tennis player, no national academy pipeline, no long tradition of top 100 pros, just a family that happened to love the sport. Her mother, Riza Maniego Eala, was a competitive swimmer who won a bronze medal at the SEA Games before moving into corporate life. Her father, Mike, has been a fixture in her career from the start, the parent who traveled with her to junior tournaments around the world, who was in the stands or on a video call for almost every milestone. But the very first coach in Alex Eala's life wasn't a professional at all. It was her grandfather. From the age of 3.5 until she was 13 years old, it was him, training with her and her brother day after day, with no cameras and no crowd, just a court and a basket of balls. Here's the thing about that kind of apprenticeship. Nobody hands you a highlight reel for it. You just get better, quietly, for years, and almost nobody outside your own family notices. That changed in 2018. Eala, then 12 years old, won Les Petits As, a prestigious French tournament that functions as a kind of unofficial world championship for the 12 and under age group. It's the event that has launched more future top 50 players than almost any other junior competition on the calendar. Winning it put Eala on a very short list of names that talent scouts pay attention to, and among the people paying attention were representatives from the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, founded in 2016 by Rafael Nadal himself, with his uncle and longtime coach Tony Nadal serving as its first director. The academy reached out. They offered Eala a scholarship. For a family in a country with essentially no elite tennis pathway, that offer changed everything. Access to full-time, high-performance coaching, a structured academic program built around an athlete's schedule, and, just as importantly, training partners and competition at a level that simply didn't exist for her back home. At 13 years old, Eala got on a plane to Spain, effectively relocating her entire tennis life to a different continent. What followed was a methodical junior career, Grand Slam doubles titles at the Australian Open in 2020 and the French Open in 2021. Then in 2022, the big one, Eala became the first Filipino player in history to win a junior Grand Slam singles title, taking the US Open Girls Championship. She graduated from the Rafa Nadal Academy in 2023, with Iga Swiatek, a name that will matter again later in this story, reportedly among the guests at her graduation ceremony. It wasn't a frictionless path, and it's worth saying that plainly instead of smoothing it over. A scholarship from an elite academy doesn't erase the cost of relocating a teenager across the world. Some tennis writers who've looked closely at the finances involved have pointed out that even a generous scholarship typically covers training and facilities rather than every expense a family incurs keeping a child competing internationally for years. Travel, coaching supplements, time away from work back home. Her own uncle has spoken publicly about the arrangement in similar terms, describing her as based in Spain on the academy scholarship. None of that undercuts what Eala achieved on court. If anything, it's part of why her rise resonates so strongly back home. It wasn't handed to a country with an existing tennis infrastructure to lean on. It was built, mostly from scratch, by one family. There's a detail from those early academy years that's easy to miss, but says a lot about the environment she came to. During a tournament in Switzerland in her mid-teens, after grinding through a 3-set win that finished around dinner time, Eala video called her parents, hungry, cold, and far from home, while her mother and father were stuck on a different continent, unable to travel to Europe because of pandemic-era border restrictions. Her father later described the family staying connected mostly through group video calls, an entire support system compressed into a phone screen. That's the unglamorous version of a prodigy story. Not a montage, just a teenager alone in a foreign country, calling home after a long match. None of that guarantees anything on the professional tour. Junior success and senior success are not the same currency, and plenty of junior Grand Slam champions never sniffed the WTA Top 100. Eala spent the years after her transition grinding through the ITF and challenger level circuit, climbing match by match. As recently as 2023, she was ranked outside the world's top 140. This was not a fast-tracked prodigy story. It was a slow, unglamorous climb, the kind that doesn't trend on social media because there's nothing dramatic to show. You just hit the next ball and the next one for years. Then came March 2025, and the Miami Open changed the shape of her career almost overnight.
Eala entered that WTA 1000 event as a wildcard, ranked outside the world's top 100. What she did over the following week is still, to this day, one of the most startling runs by an unseeded player in recent WTA history. She beat Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion. She beat Jelena Ostapenko, a former French Open champion. She beat Iga Swiatek, at the time the world number 2 and a 5-time Grand Slam winner, closing out a lopsided first set and then holding her nerve through a second set full of momentum swings, with Tony Nadal himself watching from her box. That run made her the first player from the Philippines ever to reach a WTA 1000 semifinal, and it pushed her into the world's top 100 for the first time in her career. She eventually lost to Jessica Pegula in that Miami semifinal, but by then, the tour already knew her name. Here's what most casual fans don't know. That Miami breakthrough wasn't a one-off. It was the first data point in a pattern that would repeat all through 2026. Eala entered the season around the number 140 mark from a year earlier, having reset after the expile of her breakout Miami points, and then rebuilt from there. A run to the round of 16 at Indian Wells, another round of 16 at Miami, a career-high ranking of number 29 in mid-March. In the Middle East swing that preceded all of that, she'd already announced herself as a threat on hard courts against elite competition, reaching the quarterfinals of the WTA 500 event in Abu Dhabi before falling to a top 11 player, and then making 3 wins at the WTA 1000 Dubai Championships, including a win over top 10 player Jasmine Paolini, before running into the player at the center of this whole story. That player is Coco Gauff. By the time Eala and Gauff met for the first time in the Dubai quarterfinals in February 2026, Gauff wasn't just a name, she was the world number 4, a Grand Slam champion, and someone who just survived an escape act of her own, saving 3 match points to get through her previous round. She walked into that quarterfinal with what looked like nothing left to lose, and she played like it. She won 6-0, 6-2 in just 67 minutes. The numbers tell you how one-sided it was. Gauff finished with 15 winners against 19 unforced errors, while Eala managed only 8 winners against 33 unforced errors. Eala won barely 30% of her first serve points. A pivotal sequence came early, Gauff leading 3-0 in a first set, and Eala forehand error handing over a game point, and Gauff finishing that game with a forehand winner at the net to go up 4-0. From there, the match essentially never turned around. Eala's misfires off the forehand wing kept ending her own service games right up to the final point of the match. Afterward, in her press conference, Gauff was refreshingly candid about her own game plan. She said her focus had been on not letting Eala dictate the point patterns the way she had in previous rounds, and she admitted, almost as an aside, that the strategy had produced something strange. She'd actually played less aggressively than usual that day, and it was the passive version of her own game that had worked. That's worth sitting with for a second, because it's a small but telling detail. The best player on the court that day didn't attack her way to a 6-0, 6-2 scoreline. She solved a problem by taking risk away from herself, and it was enough, because on that particular night, Eala's own errors did the rest of the damage. Eala, for her part, didn't dodge the result afterward. She called it a tough match and said Gauff had simply played well. No excuses, no deflection. But 3 weeks later, on a different continent, she got another chance to answer the question Dubai had raised, and this time the answer looked completely different. Before she even got to Gauff again, Eala had to survive her own scare. Her Indian Wells Open against Diana Yastremska, a former Australian Open semifinal, went the distance. A 7-5, 4-6, 7-5 battle in which Yastremska actually served for the match late in the deciding set, before Eala clawed back the last 3 games to win. It was Eala's first ever main draw win at Indian Wells, and it set up an immediate rematch with Gauff in the 3rd round, less than 3 weeks after the Dubai blowout. Before that match, Eala was asked directly about the rematch, and she didn't try to talk her way around the previous result. She called Gauff an incredible player who was going to give her a hard time, and said she knew she'd need to dig even deeper than she had in her opening round escape act. That's not the language of someone pretending the last result didn't happen. It's the language of someone who'd clearly spent the previous 3 weeks thinking hard about exactly what had gone wrong. And whatever she changed, it worked, at least as long as the match lasted. Eala took the first set 6-2, the same scoreline Gauff had used against her in Dubai, except now it was running in the other direction. She backed it up by holding serve and then breaking to open the second set, building a 2-0 lead. And then, with Gauff dealing with a physical issue that had apparently been building through the match, Gauff stopped play and retired on the spot, handing Eala the win at 6-2, 2-0. What happened next is in a lot of ways the most human moment in this entire rivalry. The 2 players met at the net, both visibly uncomfortable with how the match had ended. Gauff later told reporters what Eala said to her in that moment, a simple message hoping she'd feel better soon. And Gauff admitted she actually felt worse for Eala than for herself, because she believed Eala had been playing well enough to finish the job on her own terms without an asterisk attached to it. Gauff went further, telling the press she'd rather have finished the match and lost 6-0 than full out the way she did, but that once the pain was getting worse and she didn't fully understand what was happening physically, stopping felt like the responsible choice. She added generously that she still expected Eala to have a great tournament from there. Eala, in her own press conference afterward, reflected on what she felt she had done differently. She talked about her focus being the biggest factor in the match, along with the physical intensity she'd been able to bring, and she said directly that she had taken the lessons from the Dubai loss and tried to apply them, working on specific things within her own control rather than worrying about her opponent. So here's where the head-to-head actually sits, tied, 1-1. 1 dominant, clean win for Gauff, 1 incomplete, asterisk win for Eala, 2 matches that tell 2 very different stories about who's actually solved whom, and neither one is the full story, because neither one has been allowed to finish on its own terms. Here's what most fans miss when they look at just that scoreline. No, This rivalry didn't stay frozen after Indian Wells. Both players kept building through the year, and by August, the gap between where they'd started the season and where they'd ended up had become enormous. For Eala, the growth curve after Indian Wells was almost uninterrupted. She followed her run there with another round of 16 appearance at the Miami Open, then took a big step forward on grass, winning her second WTA 125 level title in Birmingham in June, before reaching the round of 16 at the HSB Championships, and then making a strong run to the semifinals in Berlin, beating 2 top 10 opponents along the way. Then came Wimbledon in July, arguably her best Grand Slam performance to date. She beat Renata Yastremska, then Maya Joint, and then, in one of the more remarkable results of the entire Women's Tour season, she beat the defending Wimbledon champion, Iga Swiatek, the same player she had upset back in Miami in 2025. That run carried her to the round of 4, where she finally fell to 13th seed Jasmine Paolini. And then in August came the moment that changed her career again, the Mobadilla DC Open in Washington. Eala arrived at a career-high ranking of 28th. Over the course of the week, she defeated Zhang Wen, Leylah Fernandez, and Elina Svitolina, then beat 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka in the semifinal. In the final, she faced world number 3 Jessica Pegula, the same player who'd ended her Miami 2025 breakthrough in the semifinals, and this time she won 4-6, 6-4, 6-0, claiming her first ever WTA Tour level title.